There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, but only one way to live beyond it, through madness. Some say that's what happened to the man they now call the Space King. Others whisper that he was no man at all. Whatever the truth, his legend began in silence, far from any sun, where the bones of forgotten wars drifted in the endless black. I am Magos Lex Mechanic Istranvol, last survivor of the salvage fleet Peregrine's grief. I saw the first light of his rebirth, and it has haunted me every solar since. It began as routine reclamation, an ancient battle zone near the Cyclopean Rift, littered with derelicts from the Horus Heresy. Machine spirits still muttered in the wreckage, and data ghosts roamed the Vox like angry wraiths. We were there to strip value from the dead, power couplings, intact hull plating, functioning plasma cores, profit and piety in equal measure. Then the crown woke. Our augurs picked up a pulse, faint, rhythmic, structured, not warp, not imperial, something older. It came from the Sol Invictus, a warship-class relic frozen in orbit around a dead planetoid. The records marked it as a Gloriana-patterned battleship, but the designation didn't match any known fleet. I should have reported it. Instead, I went aboard. The air inside was dry as dust, yet the ship still breathed, reactor hearts whispering, cogitators ticking like sleeping beasts. In the throne chamber, a cathedral of steel and gold, he sat upon a cracked command seat, armored in corroded ceramite, his eyes two burning embers behind a broken helm. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me. Then Vox static filled my ears, and a voice that wasn't mine whispered through the link. The stars are mine by right. The Imperium has forgotten its crown. The ship shuddered as power flowed through forgotten conduits, systems reawakened. Across the hull, banners unfurled, icons of a long-lost crusade, the sigil of a two-headed crown, flanked by suns. I ran diagnostics through trembling mechadendrites, trying to make sense of the impossible. A Gloriana-class ship could not simply survive 10 millennia untended. The machine spirits were too volatile, the systems too sacred. Yet here it was, alive and answering to a new master. "Identify yourself," I said, voice shaking through Vox feedback. He rose, metal groaned like thunder. "I am the last king of men, and I will reclaim my realm." When he spoke, I felt something shift, not just in the air, but in the warp. Echoes rippled through the veil, like the Emperor himself turning his gaze away for fear of what he'd see. We fled the Sol Invictus, but the king did not pursue. He didn't need to. Ships began to drift toward him from every direction. Derelicts, pilgrim barges, scavenger hulks. Their crews swore they heard a voice in their dreams, promising freedom from imperial tyranny, promising glory among the stars. Within a week, the Peregrine's grief was gone. Crew converted, captain executed. The ship folded into the king's growing fleet. I alone escaped, carrying this tale. Before long, the void was alive again, not with chaos, nor the Imperium's order, but with something new, something ancient. His followers called it the Reclamation Crusade. And the king sat upon his throne of starlight, gazing down at us all. "The Imperium has forgotten its crown," he said once more. "I will remind them who wears it." Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul. The throne made of stars. That's what his followers called it. But it wasn't a throne at all. It was a fleet, a patchwork empire forged from dead ships and desperate men, bound together by the will of one mad warlord who believed himself destined to rule the void. Reports began to reach the fringe systems, fleets vanishing, merchant convoys defecting, orbital stations renaming themselves in his honor. A cult was growing, one draped in imperial iconography, but twisted, repurposed. The twin-headed Aquila reshaped into a sun-crowned sigil, radiant and defiant. They spoke of liberation, not heresy, of a ruler who would rebuild the Imperium as it was meant to be, free of the ecclesiarchy's lies, free of Terra's decay. To many, those words were blasphemy. To the forgotten billions beyond the light of the Astronomicon, they were hope. I tracked his transmissions across the void, decoding them through corrupted vox logs and scavenged astropathic fragments. Each one began the same way. "I am no god. I am what man was before gods." His charisma was terrifying, not the demonic lure of a chaos prophet, but the rational conviction of a visionary. He called himself Aurelian Rex, though no record of that name existed. His followers claimed he was a Primarch reborn, a lost son of the Emperor, returned to reclaim humanity's destiny. Others whispered he was a remnant of the dark age of technology, awakened from stasis. Whatever the truth, his intelligence was undeniable. He understood void combat with an inhuman precision, how to position fleets in dead zones where imperial aspects could not penetrate, how to harness warp currents without navigators, using machine-bound algorithms instead of prayer. It was technological heresy wrapped in tactical genius. One by one, rogue traders and mercenary captains bent the knee. He didn't demand fealty with fear. He offered belonging. He rebuilt ships the Mechanicus had abandoned, forged weapons from debris, resurrected forgotten machine spirits. Watching his rise was like witnessing a new Imperium being born, but one carved from ambition, not faith. And through it all, he spoke through the vox like a prophet of logic. The Emperor was never meant to be worshipped. He was meant to be followed. And where he failed, I will finish his design. There were no daemons in his ranks, no warp-spawned sigils, no madness in the eyes of his followers. Yet there was something colder, the fanatic calm of those who believed utterly in their cause. Even chaos feared them. I once infiltrated one of his orbital bastions, the Sanctum Meridian. Inside, I saw engineers and soldiers laboring side by side beneath a massive holographic map of the galaxy. The stars were marked with shifting sigils, every imperial stronghold annotated with estimated years until collapse. He wasn't just building a fleet. He was planning conquest, systematic, patient, inevitable. He walked among them like a king, not in gilded armor, but in worn ceramite, reforged from multiple marks, pre-heresy patterns melded with new alloys. The crown he wore wasn't gold, it was circuitry, pulsing faintly with light. He passed me once, his eyes glowing through the visor slit, and said, "Do you see it yet, Magus? The Imperium is a carcass. I will make it breathe again." And for one blasphemous instant, I believed him. When I escaped back into the warp, I carried his message with me. Data logs, transmissions, a recording of his voice. I sent it to Terra, to the Inquisition. They answered swiftly. The Ordo Hereticus classified him as a level Sigma heretic and declared a warrant of absolute erasure. An inquisitor named Theo Vera was dispatched with a strike team of Death Watch veterans. The Imperium was done watching. The hunt for the Space King had begun. The darkness was about to bleed fire. The Emperor's shadow fell across the void. Inquisitor Theo Vera had been hunting heretics for 40 years. She had purged cults that worshipped gods without names, burned worlds tainted by whispers of the warp, and walked the line between devotion and damnation more times than she cared to count. Yet, when she reviewed the data I'd sent, the voice, the transmissions, the fleet schematics, her expression faltered. "This isn't a chaos cult," she murmured, fingers tightening around the edge of the hololith. "It's worse. It's order without faith." Vera commanded the strike cruiser Absolution's Pyre, escorted by a Death Watch kill team drawn from 4 chapters, a stoic Imperial Fist, a silent Raven Guard, a snarling Space Wolf, and a brother from the Red Scorpions whose armor gleamed with obsessional purity. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Space King's domain, decapitate the heresy, and burn everything that remained. It should have been simple, but nothing in the void ever is. Their journey took them into the mire of suns, a graveyard of dead stars and lightless nebulae. Warp storms prowled there like predators, gnawing at reality's edges. Auspex readings were useless. Astropathic channels screamed with feedback. It was here the Space King had built his empire, hidden behind the carcasses of ancient fleets. Vera stood upon the command deck, a dork silhouette against the flickering holos. "She's mocking us," she said softly, fingers tightening around the edge of the hololith. "Using Imperial encryption, our own codes twisted back upon themselves." The Imperial Fist, Brother Garen, growled in rejection. "We'll find him. No tyrant hides forever." But the Raven Guard, shadow-eyed and calm, shook his head. "You don't find a ghost. You become the bait." And so they did.
They broadcast a false distress signal, a plea from a crippled pilgrim ship caught in the storm. Hours passed. Then, out of the black, a vast shape emerged, like a moon given engines, the sole Invictus. Vera watched in silence as the ancient battleship's silhouette filled the viewports. "Emperor, guide our aim," she whispered. They boarded under stealth fields and silent thrusters. I monitored through relayed data spirits, my consciousness split across vox links and servo skulls. Inside the derelict, the halls were silent but not dead, lit by faint pulsing veins of energy that crawled through the metal like blood. The Space King's mark glowed on every wall, the twin suns, crowned and radiant. Then came the whispers. No warp distortion, no psychic trace, just the ship speaking. "Do you know what your emperor has become? Do you know how many worlds die for his silence? Do you know who I was before the lies?" The space wolf barked in defiance, flames from his incinerator casting wild shadows. "Enough talk, show yourself." The lights dimmed. A figure emerged from the darkness, armor gleaming with the dull luster of ages. Aurelian Rex, the Space King. Vera stepped forward, her voice calm and resolute. "By authority of the Golden Throne, I declare you heretic. Kneel or burn." He regarded her for a long moment, then removed his helm. The face beneath was human, weathered, scarred, yet hauntingly familiar. His eyes burned with cold, unnatural clarity. "I kneeled once, when I built the Imperium with my own hands, and for my loyalty I was buried in the dark so your priests could twist his dream." Vera hesitated. Impossible! The Emperor had no... But he was already moving. Bolter fire erupted. The Death Watch fought with legendary precision, brothers moving as one, every stride an act of holy execution. The Imperial fist tore through servitors with storm shield raised. The Raven Guard vanished into the gloom. The Space Wolf's chainsword roared. Yet the king was faster. Every motion calculated, mechanical, almost predictive. He fought like one who had seen every battle before it happened. I watched through fractured data streams, transfixed. His armor bore scars older than the Imperium itself. His sword was no mere relic. It was a relic of the age of strife, woven with circuitry that bled light instead of oil. When Vera struck him with her sanctified blade, he caught it mid-swing and pushed her back with inhuman strength. "You mistake me for a traitor, but I am loyalty itself, forgotten." Then he unleashed a pulse of energy that tore through the deck. Vox links died. The last image I saw was the Absolution's pyre breaking orbit, its engines screaming as it fled into the storm. When contact was restored 3 days later, the Death Watch team was gone. Only Vera survived, barely. She'd been found adrift in an escape pod, armor scorched, eyes wide with horror. Her first words to the recovery crew were not of victory. They were of revelation. "He's not a man. He's a remnant of the Emperor's own making."
The war in the black began as a whisper, then roared into apocalypse. Within a month of the failed inquisitorial strike, the Space King's fleets erupted from the shadow zones of the mire. His armada was unlike anything the Imperium had seen since the Great Crusade. Derelicts reborn, Mechanicus constructs reprogrammed, vessels fused with ancient machine intelligences long forbidden. Every hull gleamed with the twin suns of his banner, and at their heart burned the Sol Invictus, the ghost ship that had started it all. I watched from the relay stations at the edge of the Segmentum Obscurus as his forces moved, precise, mathematical, unstoppable. They didn't conquer worlds, they liberated them. Planetary governors who knelt were spared, those who resisted vanished in a flash of orbital fire. Entire populations rose to greet him as a savior. It was rebellion wrapped in prophecy. And yet, there was no trace of chaos, no warp corruption, no demonic screams in the data. His war was terrifyingly pure, a human rebellion built on logic, unity, and rage. The Imperium's response was brutal. Battlefleet Solar diverted 3 entire subsector forces to intercept. Skitarii legions marched from Furge world Graia. Even the Grey Knights took interest, their prognosticars reading omens of a false light in the abyss. Inquisitor Vera, her body shattered but mind aflame, returned to the front lines against orders. She told the War Master, "I saw his eyes. He's not a man possessed. He's a fragment of what the Emperor might have been. That's why we can't kill him easily. He's part of the design." No one listened. The first confrontation came over Vandros 9, a dead manufactorium, world that served as his forward bastion. The void battle lasted 6 days. I saw it through the Auspex feeds of an escort frigate. Hundreds of ships burned, drifting like dying suns. Macro cannon fire lit the black with storms of fire, while lance batteries carved gashes of light across eternity. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Space King's flagship opened a transmission to every channel, even those shielded by Imperial encryption. His image appeared, regal, bloodied, his voice calm amid the chaos. "I was built to serve," he declared, "not to rule, not to destroy. I am the Emperor's correction." He foresaw the decay of his empire, and I was his answer. Buried before I could awaken, forgotten by design, but I remember everything. Panic spread through Imperial command. Entire flotillas hesitated, unsure whether they were fighting heresy or prophecy. Vera seized the open channel. "You claim to serve him? Then submit to his throne." The king smiled, a sad, almost human expression. "The throne is a prison. I would free him too, if I could." Then the Sol Invictus fired. Its main weapon wasn't a conventional Nova cannon. It was something older, something forbidden. A relic from the dark age of technology, a graviton singularity projector. The weapon compressed mass and light into a focused tear. One beam, one breath, and 3 Imperial cruisers folded into themselves, crushed to the size of a drop of blood. It was beautiful, horrifying, godlike. The void itself screamed as reality buckled. Ships were ripped apart without fire or explosion, just silence and collapse.
Even the Adeptus Mechanicus recoiled. To them it was blasphemy made manifest. But the Imperium never yields. The Grey Knights teleported aboard the Sol Invictus, their blades blazing with psychic light. What happened next became legend whispered among the fleets. No Vox record survived. Only fragments of the king's final message remained from the wreckage of 1,000 ships. They call me heretic, but I am their memory. When the last light of humanity fades, they will remember the crown that dared to shine. I saw his fleet fragment then, half destroyed, half retreating into the warp. But something impossible occurred. The Sol Invictus didn't explode. It vanished completely. Vera's ship limped from the battle, her hull aflame, her voice breaking through Vox static. He's gone, but the warp, it echoes his name. He's not dead, he's becoming something else. The void fell silent again. Yet every astropath within 5 sectors screamed in unison that night. Each spoke the same phrase before their minds burnt out. The king has taken the throne of stars. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul.
The crown falls. Weeks passed after the war in the Black, but its echoes never faded. Across 1,000 systems, Vox channels pulsed with fragments of his voice, as though the void itself refused to let him die. Some said his fleet had been annihilated, others that he had ascended, not into godhood, but into the machine. I, Magos Lex Mechanic Istranvol, could not stay silent. I traced his signal into the ruins of Vandros IX, where the ashes of that last great battle still drifted like snow. The planet's surface was a graveyard of metal and bone. The sky hung low and red, filled with the ghosts of burning ships. And then I found it. Buried beneath kilometers of debris, pulsing faintly through my auspex, a signal too structured to be random. The Sol Invictus, or what was left of it. I descended alone. The air was thick with static, each breath tasting of ozone and decay. The corridors were twisted beyond recognition, metal warped into veins and bone. The ship's core hummed with a rhythm almost human. Then I heard it. You returned. The voice echoed through the chamber, soft but unmistakable. He stood before me once again, Aurelian Rex, though no longer fully flesh. His armor had fused with circuitry, his body half light, half machine. Where his eyes once burned with ambition, now only sorrow remained. I took a step forward. You survived the singularity weapon. How? I did not survive. I transcended. When the Sol Invictus fell, I merged with its machine spirit. The ship became my tomb, my kingdom, my curse. The throne I sought was hollow. All around us, the ship began to hum, its walls flickering with faint, ghostly projections, memories of his reign, fleets burning, worlds kneeling, faces of the faithful, eyes filled with hope and fear. Do you understand now, Magos? He asked. The Emperor never wanted gods. He wanted men who could build, create, and endure.
I tried to finish his work, but even that dream is heresy. The air grew colder. I could feel the warp pressing close, as though drawn by his despair. The boundary between real space and nightmare stretched thin. He turned his gaze toward the heavens, his voice fading to a whisper. Tell them I never wanted the crown. I only wanted to remember who we were. Then, with emotion almost reverent, he reached up and removed the circuit crown from his head. It glowed faintly in his hand, light condensed into sorrow. He placed it on the deck. The ship began to collapse. Energy surged through the conduits, fire and light consuming the corridors. I ran, through flame and shrapnel, through the screams of dying machine spirits, and when I looked back once last time, he was still there, standing amidst the storm, eyes lifted toward the dying sky. The Empire has forgotten its crown. Let it stay forgotten. Then the Sol Invictus imploded, vanishing in a bloom of light that outshone the stars. No wreckage was ever recovered. No trace of his followers remained. Only silence and the faint echo of that title whispered in astropathic static. The Space King. Some say he was a Primarch, others believe he was a machine god reborn. But I, who saw him twice, know the truth. He was neither man nor monster, just a reflection of everything the Empire could have been, if only it had remembered mercy. The Empire declared victory. The Inquisition sealed all records, but sometimes when the void winds howl, I swear I still hear him, a voice woven into the static, whispering across eternity. The stars are mine by right, and I wait for my crown. In the end, the legend of the Space King became another heresy buried beneath the Empire's endless wars. To some, he was a liar who defied the throne. To others, a martyr who dreamed too greatly. But to those who dwell beyond the Emperor's light, the lost, the forsaken, the forgotten, his story is a promise that mankind's spark still burns, no matter how dim the galaxy becomes. Perhaps that is his true victory. Not conquest, not empire, but memory. The echo of defiance in a universe built on obedience. The Mechanicus will deny his existence. The Ecclesiastiki will curse his name. Yet among the void-born, whispered prayers still rise. The King watches. The King returns. And sometimes, between the stars, faint signals still pulse in rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 1. The same pattern that first awakened the Sol Invictus. I listen every night, and in the static I swear I still hear him say, mankind was meant to rule the stars, not worship them.